Every famous weed strain has an origin story. Usually it's some breeder in a grow room, crossing two known plants on purpose to make something new. But there's one strain where nobody, not even the people who grew it, actually knows where it truly came from. Its parents are a complete mystery, lost forever. And yet that one mysterious plant went on to become the grandfather of the entire modern gas era, the ancestor of both OG Kush and sour diesel. This is the story of Chemdawg. So the whole thing starts back in 1991, and it starts, of all places, in a parking lot at a Grateful Dead concert. Specifically at Deer Creek Amphitheater in Indiana, June of 1991. There was an 18-year-old kid from Massachusetts following the band on tour, and his nickname would eventually become Chemdawg. But his real name is Greg, and he's given interviews about this story himself, so this isn't just legend. He was wandering through the parking lot looking to buy some weed, and he ran into two guys from Colorado selling a strain they were calling Dogbud. And when he smoked it, it blew his mind. He said it was the best weed he'd ever seen in his life. So green and so strong, it hit him like kryptonite. He bought what he could, and he got the guy's phone number. And after the tour, he called them up and had more of it mailed to him. And that shipment is where the magic happened. Because when it showed up, one of the bags had something surprising in it. Seeds. 13 seeds, to be exact. And that was a shock, because that Dogbud was normally seedless. So now this kid was holding 13 little seeds of the best weed he'd ever smoked. Now let's talk about that name, because it's a mashup. The two guys selling it thought the weed smelled so sharp and chemical that it had to be pumped full of chemicals, so they started calling it chemweed. And it was called Dogbud. So you take the chem from chemweed and the dog from Dogbud, and you get Chemdawg. That became the grower's nickname, and later the strain's name. Some people spell it Chemdawg with an AW, but that spelling actually came from other breeders later on. The original guy always spelled it DOG. But anyways, he took those seeds and started growing them out, and this is where the famous versions of Chemdawg were born. Out of the first few seeds, he got a couple of keepers that became legends. The most famous one is known as Chem 91, named after the year. Another became known as Chem's sister. And years later, he popped more of the seeds and got two other legendary cuts, known as Chem D and Chem 4. Those four plants, Chem 91, Chem's sister, Chem D, and Chem 4, became some of the most sought-after and important cuts in all of weed. Now I have to be honest about that origin story, because this is exactly the kind of thing this channel digs into. A lot of that story is actually pretty well documented, which is rare. Greg, the grower, is a real named person who's given interviews about it. But some of the finer details, like the exact 13 seeds, are things even other experienced growers quietly question. The story has been told so many times by the few people who were there that some of it may have gotten smoothed out over the years. So the broad strokes are solid, but a few details live in that hazy space between memory and legend. But that leads to the single biggest mystery of all, and it's the heart of this whole story. Nobody knows what Chemdawg actually is, genetically. Think about that. This is one of the most important strains in history, and we have no idea who its parents were. The trail just goes cold at that bag of weed in the parking lot. Whoever grew that original Dogbud, and whatever it was made of, is lost to history. And people have guessed for years. The most common guess is that it came from some mix of old Thai and Nepalese landrace strains, based on the way it smells and the tall, stretchy way it grows. Some point to the Hindu Kush region as another possibility. But I want to be really clear about something here, because a lot of videos and websites get this wrong. That Thai and Nepalese landrace idea is just a guess. It has never been proven. In fact, Chemdawg was actually the very first cannabis strain to ever have its DNA fully mapped by scientists back in 2011. That was done by a company called Medicinal Genomics, and they did it in Amsterdam. And even that didn't crack the mystery. It told us nothing about who its parents were. So anyone claiming science figured out Chemdawg's true lineage is simply wrong. It remains a genuine mystery to this day. So let's talk about what made this plant so special that people obsessed over it. And it comes down to the smell. Because Chemdawg basically invented an entire category of weed flavor. Before it, people described weed as skunky, or earthy, or fruity, or piney. Chemdawg brought something totally new. A sharp, pungent chemical smell, like diesel fuel or gasoline or cleaning solvent. It was loud and it was aggressive, the kind of smell that fills a room the second the bag opens. This is literally where the terms gas and diesel and chem come from in the weed world. Before this plant, nobody was describing weed as gassy. After it, that became the highest compliment you could give. Chemdawg is the plant that started it all. And there's some cool science behind why it smells like fuel instead of just weed. For a long time, everybody assumed the smell came from terpenes, which are the compounds that give plants their scents. Chemdawg does have a heavy terpene profile, including a lot of caryophyllene, which gives it some of that spicy, peppery bite. But it turns out that sharp, skunky, gassy smell actually comes from a completely different group of compounds called volatile sulfur compounds, or VSC compounds. Researchers at a company called Abstracts Tech published a study on this in 2021 in the journal ACS Omega, and that's where the science really got nailed down. These VSC compounds are the same type of compounds that give skunk spray and garlic their punch, and one of the key ones identified in cannabis is a prenalated sulfur compound called 3-methyl-2-butene-1-thiol. So that unmistakable gassy smell isn't really a normal weed smell at all. It's a whole different chemical family doing the work, and Chemdawg had it in spades. As for the high, Chemdawg is potent, and not really for beginners. It's a heavy hitter that comes on fast and hard in your head, then settles into a strong, relaxing body high. It's a balanced hybrid that hits both ends, and it's strong, usually testing in the high teens to mid-20s in THC, with some batches over the years testing even higher than that. So it wasn't just a novelty smell. It was genuinely powerful weed that backed up the hype. But now we get to the real reason Chemdawg matters so much, the thing that makes it a true legend. It's not just about Chemdawg itself, it's about its children. Because Chemdawg is the parent of the two most important American weed strains of the modern era. One built the East Coast, and one built the West Coast. On the East Coast, Chemdawg is the parent of sour diesel. The story goes that one of those famous cuts, Chem 91, got crossed, sort of by accident, with another plant. And the result was that legendary sour, gassy, diesel-smelling strain that took over New York City in the 1990s. Sour diesel became the sound and smell of New York weed and hip-hop through the late 90s and 2000s, the strain everybody in the city wanted. And it all traces back to Chemdawg. And on the West Coast, Chemdawg is widely believed to be the parent of OG Kush, maybe the single most influential strain in all of American weed. The common story is that a Chemdawg seed made its way out west and got crossed with other genetics, and the result was OG Kush. And OG Kush then became the foundation of the entire California weed scene, spawning a massive family of its own, all those OG strains you see everywhere. Now I need to be honest here too, because these lineage stories are hazy, just like the origin. The exact crosses that made sour diesel and OG Kush are debated, and different people tell different versions. Some of the details will probably never be fully nailed down. But the one thing almost everyone agrees on is that Chemdawg sits at the root of both of those family trees. So whether you trust every little detail or not, the big picture is clear. Chemdawg is the common ancestor of both coasts. So think about what that means. That entire style of weed we now call gas, all that loud, pungent, fuel-smelling, high-potency stuff that dominates dispensaries today, basically flows out of this one mysterious plant. The East Coast Diesel Empire and the West Coast OG Empire both grew from the same seeds in that Grateful Dead parking lot. Chemdawg didn't just become a popular strain. It became the genetic backbone of modern weed. So that just leaves us with the million-dollar question. Where does Chemdawg stand today? And honestly, the answer is, it's treated like royalty. It's considered one of the most important and foundational strains that has ever existed, an absolute cornerstone of cannabis history. Those original cuts are still passed around and grown by people who treat them like treasure. And its family tree is almost too big to map, because on top of Sour Diesel and OG Kush, its genetics run through countless other famous strains that came after. But there's one catch worth mentioning here before we finish. The real Chemdawg only exists as a clone-only cultivar, meaning it's never been stabilized into seed form. Just clones passed from hand to hand for over 30 years. And because of that, a whole lot of the weed labeled Chemdawg out there isn't the real thing. People just slap the famous name on something to sell it. Greg himself has said that most of what's sold under his name isn't actually his genetics. So the true Chemdawg is rarer than the menus make it look, which is pretty insane if you ask me. But either way, at the end of the day, Chemdawg is the ultimate mystery of the weed world. It's a strain whose own parents are completely unknown, that appeared almost like magic from a bag of weed in a parking lot at Deer Creek, and yet went on to quietly build the entire modern era of cannabis. Both of the strains that defined weed on both coasts, and that whole gassy flavor everybody chases now, all trace back to that one unsolved puzzle. It's proof that sometimes the most important thing in the room is the one nobody can fully explain. So, what about you? Are you a fan of that loud gas flavor? And did you have any idea it all started with one mystery plant? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives like this one, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.